Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Adoption Dialog, the show about all things adoption, the joy, the challenges, and the many, many complexities. My name is Judith Alexis Craig, and I'm one of your co hosts. I'm an adoptee, foundling, born in Haiti, and adopted to a predominantly white family in Canada. I'm now a parent myself to both biological and non biological children. I'm a social worker, a therapist, and a speaker. And I'm very passionate about ensuring adoption is done in the best possible way for all, particularly our adoptees. And my co host is Auntie Sally Bafour.
Yeah, I'm Sally Bafour, and I was an interior architect. And after adopting my twins, I gave it up and decided to become a parent, a single parent, because I felt at the time that my children needed that kind of care. And it's funny, I was mentioning it a bit earlier that I remember as a young person, one of my aunties advised that, as a woman, you've got to be ready at the drop of a hat to change professions. And I thought, why would I ever want to do such a thing? But when the time came, I did it without even thinking twice about it. And I've never looked back. So I adopted my children, became an adopting consultant eventually, and met Judith. And the beautiful thing is that because I'm an adopted parent of same race, although different cultures, and Judith is a transracial adoptee, we're coming from two extreme ends of adoption. We decided to come together and put together a program like this so both of us could learn from each other and learn from our guests as well. So really, this is an opportunity not only for us to learn, but to share what we're learning. So welcome, Yolanda.
So joining us today, I have the privilege of having a newer friend who we met probably just a couple of months ago, and a colleague.
Yeah.
Right? Literally, it was like a couple months ago, but I feel like I've known her for ages. And a mutual friend connected us. And ironically, we live in the same city, a city outside of Toronto, Canada. And for us to meet as two Haitian transracial adoptees is just beyond. So of course, when our friend told us about each other, we were both, I think, pretty like, what? And we said, we have to meet. We were so excited. And I think the first time we met, we probably talked for about 3 hours and over coffee, and just, it was beautiful. So I am thrilled to have you on today. We are thrilled to have you join us because your story, as much as we are connected as adopted people and being from the same country and living and growing up in some similar experiences even, but each story is so unique and so personal. And we always say on the show, it's all about learning. And it is such a gift to hear from adopted people and allow them to share their stories and their truth, knowing that we're not looking at this through rose-tinted glasses. We're here to tell the truth. As we always say, it's joyful, loving, it's loss, it's sadness, it's grief, and everything in between. So thank you for joining us this afternoon and this evening, Yolanda. And we are going to jump right in, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Excellent. So can you just start by telling us a little, we know you're from Haiti. I obviously gave that away. And the beautiful picture behind you, of course, also has our Haitian flag on it and the Canadian flag. But can you tell us about your journey from Haiti to Canada? What led your parents to adopt from Haiti?
Well, it's interesting because growing up, the knowledge that I got about the adoption was from my mom, right? She really made it a point to always tell me about her journey. Like, she was the one who went to Haiti to meet my family. I think she went twice.
Okay.
And she went during the middle of a coup. She really was determined, and I asked her, why did you want to adopt? And she's like, well, I always wanted to adopt, and I was going to adopt a baby from China originally, and then something kind of happened and it changed. But she said it was always her aspiration to want to adopt a baby. And the story that I have is, I was 4 months old. She went to Haiti, I suppose, the second time. When she showed up at the airport, my bio dad and my brother and sister were there as well with their suitcases. And my bio dad was like, are you going to take these children too? Can you take them too? Knowing that I was
Wow.
going to a first world country with a middle class family, all of these things. So
Wow.
I can't imagine what my mom went through trying to explain that process. And there was such um, oh my God, a language barrier in terms
Yeah.
of explaining that. Um, so
Wow.
that's really the story
Can I
that
ask,
I
when
yeah.
you mentioned language barrier, is because your adopted mother is an English speaking, is she?
Yes,
Oh, so she
yes.
doesn't speak French.
No,
So my
no.
question is, how did she know about your family, and how did you? So obviously, she must have they knew each other or somehow.
Mhm.
What happened before that moment of meeting?
Oh gosh, that I don't know. Like I know that I had an adoption worker. Her name was Merlant as well.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so that adoption worker, I suppose was really involved in terms of
Mm.
the translating piece, the um, assessing my adopted family to see like, are you equipped enough to take a child? And so I have all of that paperwork. Like
Right.
there's a box of all of my adoption papers and things that I've taken and I've read through them
Mm.
and all of the things. But in terms of like the bits and pieces of the actual story have been lost, like lost in
Mm.
translation, lost in paperwork, lost just now with my mom. She's not um stable enough to share that information with me anymore.
Mm.
Okay.
Um, so it's a lot of
Because what would have happened is
yeah.
either there was an agency, maybe, or we just wanted
Mm.
to have an understanding of whether maybe your parents found that they needed to have some of their children adopted and went off to an agency to say so, and
Mm.
therefore they may have contacted you. I don't want to speculate, but this is what
No,
I'm thinking is what
so
may have happened. Yeah.
what I know is my bio mom, she had given birth to three children that had passed in childbirth. And
Mm.
I
Mm.
was the last that, had survived. And we I was born in Saint Michel de Atelier, which is the northern part of the Haiti. It's like the voodoo capital. Um, and where we were living, the story that I had, was very, you know, just a small village, very
Mm.
impoverished, not a lot of resources and basic needs. And what I heard the stories is that my family just wasn't able to feed me and keep me alive.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I guess that's where the intention of what else can we do for our child
Yeah.
arose. Um, yes,
Mm.
that's
So then they must have reached out to some agency or
To
other
an
and said,
yeah,
agency. Yeah.
we can't do it. Therefore, can somebody help us? And that, so
exactly.
really, it's about that is how much they wanted you to live, even if they weren't
Hmm.
able to. Yeah,
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. So as far as you lived with your like you stayed in your family home then until the adoption.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
okay.
Well, yes. Yes and no. Maybe not. Maybe there's a lot of back and forth with this Merlin, this adoption
Mm.
worker, like somewhere close to the capital, Port-au-Prince, where
Right.
so I was probably there. Um,
Okay.
and my family might have probably stayed in the north. Yeah, like I would love to find this Merlin and have a conversation to just
Yeah.
know actually what all happened because it's
Yeah.
so ambiguous and a lot of like holes in the story.
Mm.
Like things that I want to know, like what
For
was the
sure.
adoption agency? Was there a church? Like how did who connected? What was the
Yeah.
organization that started all of this?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
so
think it's nice
that I
that
don't have answers.
you don't
Yeah.
have that. But also the interesting part of it is the fact that when your mom came to the airport to meet you, your biological dad was there with the other siblings. Did she take all
Mm.
of them, or she only took you anyway?
Just me,
Because
just
she was
me.
not able to
Mm.
take the rest. How many others
Yeah.
did she have there at the time? He had how many? Three out
Just
there.
a brother, older sister.
Okay. But have
Wow.
you ever had contact with them or never?
Yeah,
Oh, well, we'll
actually,
have to come to that then. Oh, wow.
yeah.
Oh, my goodness. That's
Oh
amazing.
wow. Yes.
Okay,
Oh, we
please.
are looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Before we get to that,
Hmm.
so you left Haiti around similar age that I did as a baby,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
your family moved back to, well, your mom, I guess, returned with you to Canada. And I understand
Hmm.
you lived in a small, or grew up in a small town in the far north of Canada.
Yeah.
So can you share what it was like sort of growing up in that town? What were some of your earliest memories?
In the far north of Canada, being a very cold part of Canada, am I right, Yolanda? What sort of
Yes,
temperatures
very.
are we looking at here?
Oh, minus 30 Celsius. Um, it's
All right then.
winter in the winter.
I feel cold immediately just hearing that. Okay, I hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, very small town. Very maybe like gosh, a few thousand people, like even less.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
not a lot of black people. So that was one of the biggest pieces
mm,
that I remember. An earliest memory, yeah, I don't have a lot of
mm.
memories of my childhood.
Can I ask,
Um,
was your mother a single parent?
mm-mm,
She was married.
no, she was married, but she got divorced when I was 2, so I don't really remember growing up a lot in the house with my dad. So,
And you were the
Mm.
only child in the house.
nope, she has she gave birth to 2 sons, my older brother and middle brother. So I'm the youngest
Oh,
of
okay.
that. Mhm.
Mm.
And how
Wow.
Yeah.
much older are they than you are?
My middle brother, he was born in 91, so he's 35, 34. And the oldest brother, he's born in 86, 87, so he's in his late 30s now. And I'm turning 30 this year.
Mm,
Ah,
mm.
Yeah.
okay. So growing up, and did your brother stay with you and your mom when your parents got divorced? Did you grow up with your two older brothers sort of in the household with you?
Um, yes and no. Um, my I have more memories of like my middle brother than I do my oldest brother. Like I know he sort of just went off and did his thing.
Right.
So I have more memories of being with my middle brother for sure.
So you kind of grew up with him because he's not much older than you are, really, is he?
No, he's not.
So did you go to the
Um,
same school?
yeah, yeah, we went to the same
Mm.
school. Didn't like hang out with the same people and things, but um, yeah, we definitely were together a lot of back and forth from like my parents, my mom to my dad's, and like back and forth and things. So that I experienced with him, and
Mm.
my I guess my relationship with both my siblings was never really like strong,
Mm.
like. But I find as we get older, it's getting stronger, especially with the closest brother to me.
Mm.
Um, Mainly a lot of it is him like making that effort to reach out and continue the relationship, and I'm very I'm I need to do better. I need to do better.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Would you say that because you guys were in school together, people obviously knew, you guys were siblings at some point, that story would have come out being from a small
Hmm.
town. How did that, what was that experience like? Having people know, did people ask you a lot of questions? Were people curious about your relationship, or your position in the family? Do you remember sort of anything that fellow students would say, or was it just sort of accepted and people moved on?
The feeling that I have now is you the feeling that I have of you asking me that question is exhaustion. Exhaustion
Mm,
from continuously explaining to people who I meet at first value, like, this is my mom. Oh, your mom, like, you guys are
yeah,
lookalike. And then getting into the story and all these things just
yeah.
to make them feel better and like
Mm,
to try to mitigate any confusion. But now, the more learning that I do about myself and my blackness and all of these different pieces is not necessarily my responsibility, and they can figure it
Yeah.
out for themselves.
Yep.
But as a child, absolutely, like I didn't know better. Um, but in because it's such a small town, everyone just sort of knew and just left it as is, and it was
Mm.
what it was. Um, and a lot of the backlash I would get really more from adults, honestly,
Like
than
what? What
children.
kind of backlash did you experience?
Um, I remember just a lot of different microaggressions and different forms of oppression that I didn't know were oppression at the
Mm.
time, and making me feel like I remember as a little girl, now that I'm thinking about it, being in the bathtub, wanting hair like Ariel, the mermaid, so
Yeah.
badly, and just would
Mm.
put the towel on my head and want that flowing hair, and you know. And now that they came out with a black Ariel in the last few years, I was like, yes to this.
You're like, yay.
But like
Yeah.
that's what it was, right? I knew at that
Mm.
time that I was in a world full of whiteness, and
Mm.
I was not that, and I did not fit that, and that's what I wanted to be because that's what I saw around
That
me.
was the
Yeah.
norm. That was the norm
Uh,
around you. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's so interesting. And this is where I reflect so much in hearing the things that you're saying, like that feeling of, oh God, I had to always answer questions, that fatigue of doing that. I experienced
Mhm.
that. The towel on the head, definitely experienced that, and wanting that like
Yes.
luxurious, the hair you could flip, and you saw your
Hmm.
peers doing it, and my sisters, for in my
Hmm.
case. So it's just
Hmm.
it's such an interesting experience to be hearing from yourself, with some of these
Yeah.
areas, and knowing that this is the connection, right? That adoptees, when we get together, it's often just this beautiful, like,
Yeah.
because we get it in a way that's
Hmm.
so unique, and that truly,
Hmm.
if you're not adopted, you won't ever be quite, you can understand it, but we
Hmm.
understand, overstand, as I like to say, that next
Yeah.
level. So, and the
Yeah.
importance of having friends who are adopted, right, is so critical.
With
But growing up,
the shared experience, I
exactly,
think, is also
yeah,
very
Mhm.
important
that's
because of
really
what you're
important.
saying. Because, I mean, a lot of people would have heard it, but I don't think, like you said, overstand it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah.
Hmm.
yeah, they really didn't. Did you? And this question might be, I know you said there were not very many Black people in your community, but did you have any Black friends in school? Did you know any Haitian people in your town at
Oh God,
all?
no. Uh,
Okay.
no to the Haitian people. Um, but like there were like there were a few Black people, but very like the one person that is in my mind, she's very light skinned. And I was always envious of that. Um,
Mm,
um, and yes, but there was one dark skinned girl that actually left the town. But so I showed up in grade six to the school, and everyone thought that I was the girl that moved away because we were Black and dark and whatever. So, of course, we're the same people. Um,
mm,
but there was one girl who is my friend to this day, because she knew that I wasn't the person that left because she was friends with that girl that left.
oh my goodness.
So yeah, so her and I connected and we became friends and we're friends to this day. And like she was probably one of the people that really made me feel welcome in
Mm,
the school, and just in the friendship like flourished from there. But then also she's Taiwanese. So then
mm.
later now she's telling me like, oh, her parents had some sort of apprehension of her hanging out with me, like different like
Oh
that
wow.
piece. So but we were still friends and all these things, but so just learning about what her Asian background, how that was, intersecting with my background as a Black
Mhm.
person, and just that thing. So
Was
yeah,
Wow.
was she
but
also
no,
adopted? Was she adopted, or she was with her family?
no,
Oh, she was with
no.
her family. Apart from her, the only dark-skinned person in the school was you, effectively.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
There was a man who like did the radio for like years. He's still living there, but it was his daughter that um was black, but she was very light skinned. So I was always envious of her and how she was able to get her hair straighter and like all these stupid things. Um, Now I'm realizing that they're stupid, but um, no.
Yeah.
But at that time, in the situation that you were in, that's all you would have wished for, because everybody wants to fit in. You want to be like everybody else, you don't stand out. And I think
Yeah.
that motivated a lot of the things that you would have done, especially as a child, you know. It's
Hmm.
understandable, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, also at home. So if you only had her as your friend at school,
Hmm.
what was your life like? Was it a quite a quiet and lonely life? Because you wouldn't have had many friends that you play with outside of the home, would you?
I did, but it was um I don't know. It's so interesting thinking about it now. Like a lot of my friends, all of my friends growing up were white, right? Their families were white. And any I didn't have any black friends, but I did have a friend that was a person of color who was the
Mm,
one that met me in grade six. Um, but there was no discussion of race or racism, or because why would there be? You know?
mm,
Um, um, uh, yeah, like it definitely it wasn't a quiet childhood. Like I was like out in the street and getting into shenanigans and doing whatever as what kids do, but that discussion of the visual difference and reasons for it were never
mm,
really at the forefront.
Well, the good thing is that so people didn't people you had friends, they were white. That's
Hmm.
what it is.
Yeah,
You had friends who were white. They used to come to your house, you used to go to their house, and it
yeah,
was the people accepted you for what you were, even though they were different. That's what you're
yes,
saying. Am I right or wrong?
yes, yes.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah,
mm.
yeah, yeah. They got used
Hmm.
to it because you're the only black person in town,
Yeah, exactly,
effectively.
And
Yeah,
there's so
exactly.
few.
yeah.
And it's interesting that your parents, or I guess you're primarily raised by your mother, when those instances of microaggressions or prejudice or racist acts did occur to you, what did you do? Like, what did you do when they did happen? Did you go to your mom and try and talk about it? Did you confide in your brother or one of your friends around it when those situations did come up?
Well, I wouldn't have because I didn't know that there was anything wrong.
Oh,
Right.
Um, like
Yeah.
I remember the father of somebody that I was dating at the time was like something about seeing my teeth when I smile or some things. They're like, all I see is your eyes and your teeth when you smile and all these whatever things.
Wow.
And then yeah, and I would always like I remember holding my ex's hand like I was so young. I said ex, but we were like 13 or whatever. And I would see like my black skin and his white skin and
Mm,
just be so enamored by the difference of this and just
mm,
like on all of that, and then the family would act that way to me, and I didn't I knew that it hurt, but I didn't know like
mm.
what was going on behind it. Like it was just somebody teasing me, oh, you have glasses, like
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
um
Mm,
so
so what you're
yeah.
saying, Meron, is that the racism became such a part of your life that it was your norm. So you couldn't, because you didn't have the language or even the understanding that there was anything wrong with it, you saw it as how your life was. So
Yeah.
discrimination, being discriminated against, was just your life, basically, and you accepted it as the norm because you had no other way of looking at it. Is that, am I explaining it?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Okay.
mm.
So that's why
Yeah.
when you think about it, you have to stop and think about it because that was what you were used to.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which
Wow.
is, I mean, it's just heartbreaking that you knew inside. It's like you still knew, your spirit knew, right?
Yeah.
Something inside was letting you know this doesn't feel good. But yes,
Hmm.
who do you take that to? What do you do with that feeling and that, when you couldn't fully articulate that? And that's where it's heartbreaking to
Yeah.
know that, you had to fend for yourself. essentially in that area, but not quite even fully understanding it. I can imagine the
And not having anybody to share it
confusion.
with, to give you, help you
Yeah.
to even to be able to understand what was going on around you.
Mm. Yeah.
But also, the thing
Yeah.
is, having to imbibe that and grow up with it is also another issue. How do you think that that is? How, are you the same person then as you are now? And in fact, I suppose the
No,
question that I need to know is, what is it? What was the moment, the crossroads that awakened your understanding to all of this? What happened?
leaving the town.
Oh, you did. And what age were you at the time?
I was high school. I was, uh, all right. I remember writing a letter to myself. I don't know why I did that, but I was writing a
Mm.
letter to myself saying how much I hated myself, how much I hated my
Mm.
skin, my hair, my body, my not wanting to be in the town. I hated like waking up in the morning and fending for myself because my
Mm.
mom was unavailable and all of these things. Um, I threw out the letter. My mom found the letter and she
Mm.
like I was like taught, but she read it out to me and she explained to me why she was so unavailable. So because of that reason, she moved down to Toronto to get some proper or appropriate help for her mental health and all these pieces because there's ain't no doctors up there that could deal with what she was going through. So I was like, okay, that kind of puts
Mm.
into perspective why I felt so lonely and a child taking care of themselves. But
Mm.
when I was, so my mom left. I moved into the my aunt's house for my last year of high school.
And where does your aunt
Um,
live? Where did your aunt live?
oh, she lived like maybe a town 45 minutes away, so
Okay.
it was like
So your mother
close.
left your town and went to Toronto and left you with her sister.
Yes,
I see. In the same a nearby town, another small village.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And so the high school got so bad in terms of like teasing and like all these
Mm.
like now kids are sucked. And high school was not great for me in terms of like bullying and whatever. So I asked the
Mm.
principal if I could do like the last half of the year of grade 12 from home. And I did. And I got into university and I left university and
Sorry, where
I
was
went
your
to
university? You would have actually left the town, wouldn't you? So what you're
yeah.
saying, I just need to just be clear in my mind. When you
Hmm.
went to live with your aunt,
Hmm.
you then changed schools, and that is the school where you experienced a lot of racism in
Yeah,
the aunt in your
that's
aunt's place. And was she able to help you, or she also was not able to help?
not in the terms of what you might be thinking.
Mm.
There was not a lot of race discussions or anything like that with my family at all, ever.
So when
Mm.
you were
Um,
so when you were treated badly and bullied, did you not feel able to tell her that I've just been bullied?
I did, but anything further than, oh, I feel bad because this happened, nothing really. Like
Mm.
no below the surface level uncovering the blackness, racism, oppression, all of these things because that they didn't see race. They didn't there that
Mm.
wasn't they just saw me as a family member as opposed to a family member who's black and adopted and going through these things in a school full of white children who have no other black people around them.
Yeah.
Um so there
But
that
did they attempt to
yeah.
at least to help you through the full bullying, if nothing else? If not the racism, did they at least advocate for you from the perspective of bullying? My daughter is being
Yes.
bullied. Let's just go and do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
They may not have
absolutely.
touched race, but they did.
Yes, they
Uh-huh.
did.
Mm.
Yeah,
And,
which
and
was
then,
part of the reason why I was able to do school from home. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and the when I left this town and I went to London, Ontario, to Western University, um, that's when everything literally changed because I was in a women's
Mm.
studies and feminist research program, and there I learned about feminism and Black feminism and forms of
Mm.
oppression and racism and bell hooks and like you
Yeah.
just I learned about intersectionality
Mm.
and I was just like, oh, okay, so it's not me. It's It's this.
Mm,
It's not me. There
yeah.
are reasons for this. So that's definitely when everything sort of changed for me.
Wow. That's
See.
it's amazing how that education and getting that knowledge and insight, it sounds like your world just opened up. A whole part
Yeah.
of yourself that was really had been
Hmm.
really quite sheltered, and
Yeah.
kept silent, really.
Hmm.
So
The thing is, so
how
what
wonderful.
impact? What impact did it have on you? The minute you
Mm,
recognize when your eyes, let me use it this way, that light bulb moment when you
mm,
suddenly realize, oh, this is what the real life is. Did you then stop to reflect on your life and say, oh, if this is what the real life is, this is what was happening to me at this age, this is what this means, this is what that happens, and if so, what was the impact on you at that point, knowing that you'd been through all of this silently, not understanding what was going on? Let's hear what was going on. Do you have any reflection at all of that?
I think I'm still deconstructing all of that and
mm,
processing it, and which is honest to God probably half of the reason why I'm in the field that I'm in. Um,
Which is what field are you in then, please?
I'm a therapist, um, and I work with Black people of color. And I work with people who feel like they don't fit in. I work with people who, yeah, I can go on for days, but it's
mm,
yeah, I definitely like I'm still reflecting, and I'm still like I find a lot of like gaps and disconnect with my adopted family now that I've done so
mm.
much learning, and it's not
Yeah.
to any fault of theirs, but within all of the race and oppression, there were so many like other things like alcoholism. Like I went through a lot of different adverse childhood experiences on top of the race piece. So being
That
able
was
to
you were experiencing it yourself, or it was happening around you.
happening around me, absolutely. A lot of alcoholism, a
Mm,
lot of like different uh like authoritarian parenting styles, a lot of
mm,
like verbal abuse and fighting and all of these pieces
mm,
that I'm learning were not good for a child at the time. Um, it's, it's I'm definitely to answer your question. I'm still deconstructing and reconstructing
mm.
it, like doing a lot of unlearning for myself.
So, is your memory of your life as a child almost like dodging bullets? Your survival was about dodging bullets, and I mean that metaphorically.
um,
So you're having to do with alcohol. I've got to duck out of that one. There's some other issue, mental health issue. I've got to find a way of ducking out of that one, and
Mm,
finding a way to find a middle ground between all of the things that are going on around you. As a child, which would be very challenging because you don't even
mm.
have the tools to be able to deal with one, much less a few others. Do you have any reflection or any recollection of that at all?
that's probably half the reason why I don't remember a lot of my childhood.
Yes.
Well, I think a lot of the dysfunctional family dynamics that I
Mm,
endured precipitated the adverse childhood experiences.
mm,
Um, but I grew up with the sentiment, this like totalizing identity that I gave myself of feeling too black in some spaces and not black
mm,
enough in other spaces.
mm.
Right? So I'm too black in the small town that I was raised, and I'm not black enough once I leave the town and I'm out in the world and with all the other black people, you know?
Yeah.
So so it was always this like not feeling like I fit in anywhere. Um
Mm.
and sorry.
But that's what
Would you
happens.
w-
Sorry.
would you say that you found your community or your tribe of people now that you're sort of in a bigger city you live in, it's more diverse? Has that happened for you yet, would you say? Over the past decade plus, I guess, that you've been out of your smaller town?
Decade plus, no. In the last few years, yes. In terms of like finding a partner and knowing what a healthy relationship is like, and like meeting you and meetings. It started to happen when I met other people who were adopted, because like I could count on like my one hand, even like for like no, I didn't meet any people who were adopted, and it was always like, oh my God, you are like what,
Yeah.
and I was just so like, talk to me more about your life. And because
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody else who was adopted, and that's why I feel like we talked for 3 hours, because like our stories were so similar in
Yeah.
terms of those similar lived experiences and being in a white family as a black
Yeah.
woman. And I think now in the last few years is like I've definitely found my tribe. Like there's still bits and pieces even with my partner where I have to like, okay, catch myself.
Mm,
um but that's, I find, all part of the learning, all part of the, to Auntie Sally's question, like of the deconstructing that I've been doing.
yeah.
And that will only happen as my life continues to move on, right? And as
Yeah.
I come up with hurdles, and as I get into these situational things where I have to process and
Mm,
do the therapy thing.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I also think that on a very serious, I mean, really,
Mm,
is that it speaks to the fact that a lot of people, when you go through a lot of trauma, you tend to bury it, don't you? If it's things
mhm.
that you can't handle, the best way to deal with it is just to put it somewhere where you don't have to remember it so that you can
Yeah,
mm,
get on with your life. And I think,
yeah.
and from what you're saying, it sounds to me like young people have a stronger way of doing so, mechanism to do that even
Mm,
better than adults because they're young. You can switch
mm,
very easily. And I feel that that's probably may have played a big role in your life as you were growing up. May I ask, is your
mhm.
partner, where's your partner from?
My partner is American, and she lives
Black or white
in
American?
the States.
Black,
Black, she's
black.
black.
She's black. Ah, okay. So
Hmm.
so that's what helped you. That's what. So
Hmm.
it's helping you to
mm,
understand.
Um, no. Hmm. What's helped me to understand from being with her are the certain conversations that we'll get in that will bring up my adoptedness, or
mm,
being, like I think she was saying, we were talking about being pulled over by police. I was saying how like the seeing a police officer authority in uniform in Canada still gives me that fear.
yeah.
But it wouldn't give me that same type of, like, I would be even more afraid if I was going to be pulled over in Michigan, because that country is not mine, kind of thing. So like I'm
Mm,
being pulled over in Canada because like I'm Canadian and I was raised here and all these things, so the fear is still there, but it's not as much. So we got into a back and forth of like, you know, I didn't experience racism the same way growing up and all of these things. And just like, well, just because I didn't grow up in a black household, it doesn't mean that I didn't experience racism. I probably experienced it every day more so than you would have.
yeah.
There was no collective understanding of race in my house. Yes, we didn't
Yeah.
have the conversation of how to act when you get pulled over from a police officer, because we didn't have to have that conversation. Uh, they probably should have to me, but that my family
Mm,
didn't have that insight. But so it's those types of conversations with my partner that get into the, oh, well, you experienced this differently because your family was white, and oh, because your family was
mm,
white, that this. So that's where the learning comes in.
Okay.
Um, and not so necessarily of just her being a black person. So
But did you find that because you were black in that town, you were pulled over more than other people from your memory? I'm just trying to work out what it is what the fear is about. Where's the fear coming from?
interesting. Where is the fear coming from? The fear is coming from that I might, you know, there's this visual representation of me being a black person, a black woman, right? That's
mm,
all you see when you see me. But you don't know the backstory of like being raised in a white family and being adopted and all those pieces. So the fear comes from my my mindset of like being around so many white people and not having to be afraid. And now that I'm out of this small pond and into the big pond of people
Mm,
who don't give a crap of me being adopted and grow up in a white family, all they see is this. So when
mm,
all of they see is this, there comes the preconceptions, the stereotypes of Black people, the all of that. So that's where the fear comes from, because
mm,
your understanding of me is what you've been preconceived to understand, as opposed to me within me, like all of me, right? So like, yes, I'm still afraid when I'm pulled over, because I know that those are what that's what people are going to see, not the all of the other pieces of me, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And am I right in asking that? Does that mean that when you were in the small town where everybody knew you, you felt a little bit more protected?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt more
mm,
protected. I felt like I could hang out with the white people, and like I can get along with the old white men and grannies, and it was a mining town. So like,
mm,
I can hang out with the roughest of the roughest, like alcoholic people who will say the racist things ever. And it's just how it was, right?
mm.
Um, like very country, very like vulgar type of
Wow.
environment. And like that's like I can handle that because that's just what I was accustomed to. But that's different from now being in a big city when race is so much more prominent.
Mm. So when you go back and visit, if you do go back and visit family there, and say some of these same people who you, like you said, you grew up with them saying very racist things in front of you, and it was sort of a normalized in because that's what it was. Did you, when you go back now and visit, if that were to happen in your presence, have you had that experience, and how did you respond now with the insight and the experiences that you've had, as a Black woman in a larger city, and all that you've learned and gained, and the work you've done on yourself?
Um, I've learned to like pick my battles, and I've learned to save my energy. 'Cause remember, I was saying I'm so exhausted of explaining myself, even as though to like
Mhm.
a little kid. So to
Yeah.
come back to the town and explain myself again when you say something that might be racist, like I just don't have time. Um,
Mm,
and I'm just there to be with my family and enjoy the summer or the lakes and the beaches and the whatever.
mm,
But if it were to be my family who were to say something, then yes, I definitely would. And I did take that time before. Didn't really go the way I thought it would. Um,
mm,
but again, those are timid conversations too, because we never grew up having those conversations about race.
yeah.
So now all of a sudden I'm coming back with all this education and I'm a therapist.
When you look back on your childhood, would you
Mhm.
just, if you have to characterize your childhood, would you say it was a happy childhood? How would you describe it? Were there moments of happiness in there?
Yes, absolutely.
A lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize it as all, because I just wish there was more of a bringing forth the blackness of me being a Black person and coming from
Mm,
Haiti. And I just wish my family was more, you know, proactive in learning about how to do my hair, learning
mm,
about different things, um, about what it means to bring in a different child of a different race into a white space. Um, that part wasn't good. But
mm,
the other pieces of what it means to be a child and playing and like that was what it was. Like I was like a wild teenager, I went to parties and I did all these
mhm,
things, right? But the underlining piece of race and difference, that's what I wished would have been more 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 prominent and less hidden, less like pushed under
mm.
the rug.
Yeah.
It was really that important. I mean, it is so important to you that, if I might be allowed to use the word clouded, it clouds your memory of your childhood, because that was a big piece in your life that was missing. And
Yeah.
because that was a big piece in your
Mm.
life, it just makes it difficult for you to be able to say that, yes, my childhood was happy, because it was so big.
Yeah.
It was too big
Mm.
for you not.
Yeah.
I understand that completely. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, because it just means that, a lot of people underestimate the importance of identity.
Hmm.
And when people are going to adopt from a different race, you know, they do it from the position of altruism.
Mm.
Yeah, I want to help. I want to help society. And so the idea that there could be a difference, that there could be the issues that you're talking about, doesn't even enter their minds. They haven't got a clue about Black people. They don't even think that it's necessary, because the most important thing is love.
Yeah.
And therefore we're going to go to somebody, give her a better life than she already has. And the thing is, and interestingly enough, your parents also would have felt the same way. Your birth parents would have felt the same way. We're not able to look after a child. Somebody else has come, albeit a different race. They look like somebody who can look after our child, and therefore we're happy for our
Mm.
child to go there. And the reason I'm saying this is because it speaks to the reason why it's so important to have social services assess families, train them, help them to
Hmm.
understand that if you are indeed going to adopt a child from a different race, you need to prepare. There are lots of preparations to do. Sometimes the training is not even enough. In fact, most
Hmm.
times the training is really not enough, because
Yeah.
there's so much more to it than people totally appreciate. And that's what we
Yeah.
are finding time and time again
Yeah.
on this program.
Yeah.
And I remember when Judith's sister came, her white sister came in, and I asked her, Catherine, would you adopt a Black child? She paused for a minute. And it's what would you
Mm.
advise somebody who's going to adopt a Black child? She paused for a minute, and she said, now that I understand what Judith went through from the position of race, I see that there is so much more to bringing up a child of a different race than most people totally appreciate and understand. And
Yeah.
therefore, she asked the person, what is your motivation?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. And I thought that was so profound. Because it's
Mm.
true. What is your motivation? If your
Yeah.
Hmm.
motivation is to give this child a good life, then you know that perhaps you are not the right person to do the full package. And the full package is not just Christmas trees and presents and all those fancy things, but to be able to work with the person and their identity and see them for what they are, and
Yeah.
help them to understand the beauty in themselves and protect
Mm.
them from other racist people around them. But how can you protect them from racists if you don't understand racism yourself?
Yeah.
Most importantly, you've never walked in their shoes, so you don't have an intrinsic understanding of racism, so you would not even recognize it. That's number one. And that's the point that Catherine was making. Number two,
Yeah.
which means that if you don't understand it, when a lot of the racism is going on and the child tells you, you can't even relate to it, because
Yeah.
you haven't got the tools to have an appreciation of what she's talking about. So how then do you begin to support her? It becomes
Hmm.
an impossible task.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why it's so essential for there to be enhanced training. As in this field, I've seen it. I've assessed families for fostering and adoption. I've been in spaces where I've done training for fostering and adoption. And I can say that there is definitely a void. So I feel very much led to fill that void and to work with colleagues and friends like Merland and others who have had this transracial adoption. We had another woman on a couple of months back, Kamisha. She's another social worker and Black adoptee raised in a white family as well. And bringing us together so that we can not just share our stories, because that's important for people to understand and get that personal living experience, but to actually take it a step further and
Hmm.
develop this training program. And I'm excited to share more about that as that comes closer and closer. But I felt that I was really put on my heart because there are so many children growing up without that understanding, that lack of knowledge, that lack of connectivity, that lack of empathy for their transracially adopted children. And that needs to change, right? This is why I would say part of the reason I got into this field, and I want to pose that question to you too, Merlin. You kind of touched on it a little bit, that with everything you'd experienced, you've now become a therapist. Was that always something that you were led to do? Did you always want to sort of be a social worker and a therapist, or did that come later in life? What sort of triggered that inside of you?
Mm, no, I didn't always want to be a therapist and a social worker. I think I always had this like wanting to help people and wanting to, I always had this like thought that because my family in Haiti, my bio family, like gave me away and gave me such unearned privilege of being able to be raised in Canada, that it was my duty to give back to them. And I think that turned into wanting to give back some of this like unearned privilege that I have. So I started singing. I still like making people feel better in that way. And then I moved to women's studies and a lot of like the learning and advocating for women and like just Black spaces. And then it turned into, okay, social work. And then it turned into therapy. So it was always a commonality of serving, of giving, of wanting to uplift and support and advocate.
Wow.
And now that you're in that space, are you being fulfilled? Do you know, because you've done the journey of, and obviously you've moved on, because I think whatever it is I want to do, I haven't quite got there yet. This one will do it. This one would. So are you in the space right now that enables you to feel more fulfilled in accomplishing what the mission is, your mission?